What's up, guys? Adapark here, and today I want to talk to you guys about figuring out problems. More specifically, figuring out why you are not killing a boss within a raid. Now, we're not going to go into specifics on each boss or what does or doesn't work. However, I want to kind of share with you guys my mindset, at least a newer mindset, when it comes to evaluating and analyzing what is and is not working during a raid. Those active raid times, between this time and that time where you are engaging the boss. So one of the more common pieces of advice or things that I see groups do is pull faster. That's the big piece of advice. Minimize downtime, pull faster, maximize the amount of pulls, a maximum amount of attempts that you get on an encounter, because the more attempts you get, that means the more likely you are to kill something. That means the more likely that you're able to get lucky or, whatever. And it makes sense. It does make sense. And I want to be very clear here, I'm not at all advocating increasing downtime. There is an obvious issue if your raid is sitting there doing silly stuff, if you are not getting anything done, or if more specifically only a few people are actively doing something. If 80% of the raid is sitting there twiddling their thumbs while 2 or 3 people do whatever, they go get flasks or food or whatnot, that's a problem that we most definitely want to minimize. However, we're not talking about that. So I will admit to you guys that this has been my mindset that my guild has followed for a long time, which is pull faster. It doesn't matter what's going on, what the problem is, what the issue is. It doesn't matter. We can figure it out after the raid. Keep going. Pull again, pull again, pull again, pull again, pull again. And the problem was that we found, especially when we go into higher difficulties, when you're looking at mythic content, it's not pull, 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 because then you start to bang your head against the wall. Your collective heads are banging against the wall, and people are getting frustrated and annoyed. And it could be a very simple issue. It could be a huge issue. It doesn't matter. People are getting frustrated, which is not good for morale. It's not good for killing the boss. It's just not fun, especially when, one, it's a video game and you're supposed to be having fun. 2, you're paying for this, whether it's in-game gold or real-life money. And 3, you got to come back tomorrow and do it. You got to come back this week, in a few days and do it. Whatever your raid times are, you have to come back and do it. And that just puts a damper on things. So one of the things that we started doing here recently, as we've kind of been making some adjustments, is slow things down a little bit. Now, again, we're not pushing for downtime, but instead of going, make sure you got a food buff, make sure you got a flask, make sure your cooldowns are ready, because we're pulling in 10 seconds. And then, we wipe, and then we go, okay, get back in here, we'll, eat your food, get your flask, all this stuff, we're pulling in 10 seconds. No, instead we slow it down. And if we see that we're wiping because of a very obvious issue, we stop. And I'll ask, okay, guys, why are we dying? And sometimes, people, I fucked up on this part, and this part of the encounter happened and it wiped us. Or, whatever the case might be. I screwed up and I fell off this, or I ran into ads, or whatever. Sometimes, the majority of the time, people aren't going to answer because they're embarrassed, because they don't want to be called out. And that's okay. For those of you, and a little bit of advice for you raiders, admit when you fuck up. But if nobody answers, or I'm not getting a satisfactory answer to my question, that's when I start asking more questions. I pull up the death logs and I go, okay, why are we dying to this mechanic? Why are we standing in this bad stuff? Are we paying attention? Are we tunneling on the boss? Why do we continue to wipe at 12% and 15%? Why are we not pushing forward? What happens at 10 to 15% that is screwing us over? Is something missed? Is something, are we doing something too early, too late? What is and is not working? And I'll give you guys two great examples. So the botanist encounter, and they're actually very similar. The botanist encounter, when you get to phase 3, at least the strategy that my guild was using, we would immediately lust. Phase 3 hit, lust, pop your potions, let's go, kill this fucker. And we would get him to 20% and we'd wipe. And we'd do it again and again and again and again and again. And we continued to wipe. And then someone suggested, why don't we hold off until 30%? And I think Botanist goes to phase 3, his final phase, at 50%. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong here. But like 50%. So why don't we wait? We're getting to 20, 30%. We're not having an issue. We just need that, that 10%, that 15, 20%. Same thing with Tichondrius tonight. We sat down for a second, and instead of pulling again immediately, we talked about what was going on. And one of my guild members said, look, we are lusting right when we get out of the very first transition from phase 2, where all the bats are up and everybody's getting that nice buff, to back to phase 1. Why don't we wait until the second time? And you know what? It worked. We killed them. It was awesome. It was amazing. It was exactly what we were going for. But we didn't bang our heads against the wall. We started to ask questions. And it's, why are we popping the brand of Argus too quickly? Can we get people to move into melee instead of collapsing in on each other? Why doesn't the single person that has brand of Argus, or we call it out, why don't they run to melee? Why don't we call out this? Why don't we move that? Why don't we adjust? And this also gives people a chance to, one, ask questions, but also be reminded of important parts of a fight. Because especially when you initially go into a fight, you may not understand the entirety of the fight. Me, as a raider, and I've always been like this, the way I learn is by doing. I can watch Fat Boss, I can look at a billion different videos and a billion different guides. It is not going to click for me until I do it like 10 times. And then I'm like, oh, well, shit, I got it. Okay, makes sense. And I'll never forget it. Never. But this gives people a chance to ask questions. This gives you, as the raid leader, as the officer, as the group leader, a chance to explain what the issues are, what is and is not working. And it also gives you and others that are performing certain roles a chance to say why things do or do not work. We talked about in a video sometime last week, I think, about the Spell Augur encounter. And during the fire phase, for those of you that have done it, if you've done it on, for me, heroic difficulty, because that's where I healed it, I noticed a huge difference in me tanking it and then me healing it. In that the fire as a tank is a friggin' joke. I don't have to worry about it. Meteors fall down. I control where they land. I don't stand in fire if I can help it. Easy. But when I switched to my healer and I healed it, there's a noticeable difference, because I didn't realize you can't stop moving. You have to continue to make these small steps. And this is where you can talk to people and go, look, guys, here's why you're not going to get heals during this phase, because we are running around. We don't have a chance to heal. The druid will heal you. You'll get instants, but you're not going to get anything. So you need to make sure you're doing what you can when the fire is out to minimize damage. And it gives everybody a little, a few seconds. We're talking 15, 20 seconds after a couple of pulls to kind of collect themselves. Now, we're not pointing the blame. I'm not going, look, you are the reason why we're wiping. But I am pointing out failures. Hey, guys, we're wiping because we're not executing this correctly. We had 2 or 3 people on this last 2 polls that screwed this up, and we got to fix it. Here's why. But we also need to point out the successes. Look, dude, that was really smooth what you did. Let's continue to do that because I really like it. There was a poll we did, the last poll tonight for Tichondrius. And we killed him, and we said, ignore the ads, and the tank went down. I'm sitting there taking the bloods, moving them away. Tank goes down, and instantly my Death Knight taunts. Doesn't even think about it, taunts. And then instantly, once he gets low, the monk taunts. Didn't even have to say anything. But it's stuff like that where it's like, you guys did a great job. I'm going to encourage that type of behavior, but we're also going to point out, hey, here are things that we did wrong. And last but not least is we're not going to make sweeping changes during this, this discussion phase. This 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds in between a couple of polls where we talk about what is and isn't working. We're not making huge changes. And we're not going to go, okay, well, let's clear all the raid markers and let's redo the strategy because I found this break. No, we're not doing that. It's, hey, can we move them 10 feet to the left, 10 yards to the left? And can we turn them around like 90 degrees? Hey, can you move it to the other side? Small changes that really make a big impact. Let's minimize the things that are causing problems until we get to a point where we are comfortable with where we're at. And that helped us. And I think if you guys do it, it'll help you as well. With that being said, hopefully you guys like what I'm saying here. If you do, you guys know the deal. Hit that like button. It encourages me so much more than you guys know to hit that like and sub button to continue to make content for you guys like this. If you didn't like the video, I would very much appreciate a comment in the comment section below. Tell me what you do and don't like. Tell me what you guys do and do not want to see in this channel. And until next time, guys, I'll see you.